Hi, meeting is being recorded. Got it. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome. If you're on Zoom, you're going to see all the other, well, some of the other, a few of the other Zoom people. And if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, you'll just see the slideshow that's up on the screen that we'll be moving through this evening. But I've got a couple of little housekeeping things before we get started. So thank you for waiting. We had some, it's okay. This work, and we're very excited to be here at AquaStudios in the colony. But my housekeeping announcements, and I'll recap them for any, although we ourselves are starting late, so I won't recap these at the end. But a reminder for photo of the month, you can submit for May, vote on April, and a shout out to Gatorbait01. He won again. If you think, I heard that name before. Yes, he's setting a high standard, but there are some beautiful photos already for May. So can't wait to see the additional ones. You guys are super inspiring. And winner gets a $50 gift certificate from their choice of any of our sponsor clubs. So winner gets to pick. The bus tour video is coming. Last month, we were at Saltwater Paradise, School of Fish, Ocean Avenue, and Frank's Tank. It is in editing. And let me just do a shout out apology to Wes, because I did the filming and I'm sure it's tough on him trying to put that together and just anything useful for the YouTube channel. A status update. Some of you, if you've been members for many years, back when we used to have plastic cards, Billy used to maintain a database, and we used that to do a 2,500 member postcard mailing. So some of you may have gotten that, and if you're a newer member, we don't have your address in the database because we've gone digital. So you didn't get a postcard, sorry. And our return rate on the postcards is well under 10%. I really thought it would be higher given the hot Texas market. So that was quite a pleasant surprise. Our upcoming club booth events, you'll see the club at Texas Coral Fest on May 7th. We'll be at the DFWMAS Freshwater Expo on May 14th. May 18th, which is a Wednesday, so I know we're alternating Wednesdays and Thursdays. So Wednesday at 7 p.m., May 18th. We have, very excited about this. It's been lined up since last year. Jay Wilson of CC is going to be speaking on Go with the Flow, the importance of flow and some myths. He's going to be coming in on Zoom to this big giant screen that you see here. He'll be on Zoom. And then if you'd like to come in person, our hosting sponsor is School of Fish. And bring your own chairs, just like, although School of Fish is attached to a school itself. And Lee is saying something about they have seating. So more to come on that. This summer Frag Swap is June 18th. That's Father's Day weekend. We are bribing volunteers with t-shirts. So if you're like, oh, how do I get one of those really awesome club t-shirts? We need volunteers to help us set up, to break down, to help the hobbyists set up their booths, clean up, and also with the bounce back. So bounce back, I think most of you are already familiar with what that is, but that's our reaching out, trying to help people that were really impacted by the ice storm. And thank you. We had some active members donate their prizes back so that we could try to touch less fortunate people. And round 2 of Bounce Back is going to be, thank you, May 31st at 7 o'clock. That is a Zoom only event. And it's just to let people know that we care, trying to get a little something into people's hands. Now, anyone who was a winner in round 1 that we have not heard from, and we have gone above and beyond, we've messaged you through the website, we've sent you note cards. If I had a phone number, I also texted and called. But if we haven't heard from you, the deadline for prizes is the end of this month, and everything that's left is rolling into part 2. It's looking like we may have enough to touch every member's life, but don't quote me on that. But we're hoping. And so that goes. I don't think I'm missing anything. So I'm very excited. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Our guest speaker tonight is Brandon Hooten. He's the general manager here at AquaStudios. Yay, give it up for Brandon. I have learned so much from this man. So without further ado, let him come over and speak. And let me know when you want to just advance the slide.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brandon Hooten. I do run AquaStudios here in the colony, and I've been in the industry now for around a little over 18 years, and started off in retail, went to wholesale, went to being a salesman for manufacturers, and then now back to retail. Came back to what I really enjoy doing. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. I included cyano in this, but I didn't do a lot of photo evidence of cyano, what we all commonly call red slime algae, because we kind of all know what it is. We kind of all have seen it before. We've seen it in people's tanks, especially this time of year. When my allergies kick off, we always have big cyano blooms, very typical. So it's funny how it works, but it's just the way it is. So I'm going to focus more on dinoflagellates and diatoms in this. So diatoms, as we all know, is that ugly stage right when you first get your tank set up. What causes that is all silicates. We're going to get into that here a little bit more in a minute. So let's go ahead and click over to the next one. So as far as general water parameters go, there's a lot of confusion and misinformation out there. You don't want 0 nitrates and 0 phosphates. I know that's what happens in the ocean, but we can't replicate the amount of food that the items are getting in the ocean, the amount of live high protein diet that they get. We can't replicate that in our aquariums without causing the water parameters to go AWOL and cause tons of algae. So we usually try to stick to around 5 to 10 parts per million on the nitrates. Phosphates, there's a little bit more flexible. I usually will let mine run up to about 0.25 before I start getting concerned at all. But 0.03 on a low nutrient system or like an SPS system is perfect. Up to 0.2, 0.25 on LPS and softies, I find to be totally acceptable, and I don't see a lot of extra algae growth from that. So this is what you have to worry about with most algae. We're not usually super concerned about alkalinity or calcium, magnesium, things of that nature when we're dealing with algae, because they don't affect algae all that much. Typically, it's going to be your just your nitrates, your phosphates, your nutrient levels, as we usually call them. So could somebody click me over real quick? Awesome, thank you. So if you think you have dinos, the only way to truly tell if you have dinos is to have a microscope and compare the things that I'm going to show you here in a minute of what they look like under microscopes to what you're seeing in your, to what you would see online, the proven cases that we have at this point. This is all relatively new stuff. This information really has only been hardcore being talked about since about 2019. So it's all still relatively fresh in the industry. A lot of people are still learning about it. But so the few things is if you're carbon dosing, reduce the amount you're dosing. So don't stop it, because then bacteria go into overdrive and you have a lot more problems on your hands than just the dinoflagellates. You also reduce amino acid dosing. I was reading a thing just a few days ago about this, trying to refresh my memory and make sure I was getting everything on the point. And they specifically called out Red Sea's AB plus and called it rocket fuel. And that it won't cause dinos, but it will definitely feed dinos. And so once they're already present, you want to reduce or stop amino acid dosing for the time being until you get the dinos gone, then resume. A big thing that I had never thought about was dosing phytoplankton and copepods. It all comes down to the balance of the organisms that are in your aquarium. If you're lacking on copepods and phytoplanktons and microorganisms that typically would outcompete dinoflagellates for the nutrients and for the food that's available, then that is what gives dinos the chance to take off. So an imbalance is typically what causes it. And so highly recommended to periodically add some pods, dose phyto. And usually we start off, don't go by recommendations of the manufacturer. They're trying to get you to buy more phyto. I typically go with, you start off with a once a week dosage. and then slowly increase over time. So the first few weeks, it's once a week. Then the next few weeks, it's twice a week. And the next few weeks, it's 3 times a week. And so you gradually increase that dosage, because if you just go dump a whole bunch in your tank one week, you might end up with green water, because that stuff will reproduce in your aquarium, and you don't want that to happen, because then you have to go buy a UV sterilizer. Next, add carbon to your filtration, because if you don't add carbon to your, or don't have carbon running in your filtration, dinoflagellates, especially the ones that are dying, are toxic. And so if you don't add carbon, then sometimes that toxicity will cause problems with your corals, your fish, with your invertebrates, things of that nature. If you're killing off large portions of them at once, very similar to flatworms. Also, don't add a cleanup crew. I know it's the first thing everybody wants to do. I see algae, I need snails. If the snails do happen to eat it, even if it doesn't kill them right now, it will most certainly kill them. It's toxic, it builds up in their intestines and their guts, and it wipes them all out within a week, usually. So no point in adding any cleanup crew and wasting that money, and they're not going to do any good anyway. They can't really eat it enough to be able to handle it, even if they didn't die. So I'm going to click over. I'm not going to attempt all these names because Australopsis I can get, and then Coolio, not Coolio, but Coolio, I can do that one. But so the first 2 on the list here are the rarer varieties that we don't see as often, and are also the ones that typically take longer to get rid of and are a little bit more difficult to get rid of. They fight us a little bit more. And then these 2 down at the bottom are going to be the ones that we typically see more often and are a lot easier to get rid of. So let's click over and I get into the individual ones and what to do. So these are the non-dinos that look similar to dinos. So I have this in the store. We get this at least once or twice a week, where people come in, and it's hard to tell, even from pictures and sometimes videos, which things they are. Because I've seen diatoms get a little bit longer and stringier. I've seen these chrysophytes that look just like dinos that aren't dinos. They come from excess silicates, both of these. So there's excess silicates in the water, which usually come from dust, debris blowing in, things of that nature. Those guys will start showing up. And usually if you have a high quality silicate tester, I've been advised against Salifert on that one, which I don't like because I love Salifert, but there's a couple other brands. I'm gonna give you the paper that a lot of this stuff came from, and what they recommend, and all that is in there. And there's a lot more. We're gonna get into like dosing silicates and stuff here in a little bit for some of the other ones. And so he has all the formulas and stuff broken down. That way you can easily extrapolate from your tank size. I didn't want to take up too much time and go through all this math stuff that nobody's gonna be interested in. So let's go ahead and skip to the next one. All right, so these are the rarer of the diatoms or the dinoflagellates. These are the most difficult to beat because UV sterilizer are not as effective. These guys at night, all dinoflagellates move at night. You've all tell that when you turn your lights off, it seems like they go away overnight and they come back in the morning. It's because these guys go into the rocks in the sand bed. So they travel into substrate. And so they're not going to be floating free in the water column where a UV sterilizer will be able to handle that. So this one is one that you have to dose silicates to, and you're trying to create a diatom bloom, because the diatoms will be able to help the phytoplankton and the pods and everything else you're doing combat what they're doing. So like you're basically trying to outcompete the dinos. And it takes a lot longer. I've seen cases like this. We had a customer not too long ago that was going through this, and it took him, I think, about 3 months to beat it, but he finally beat it. The biggest issue is silicates are uptook in the system very quickly. So the uptake of silicate matter is very fast with corals and with all the algae and other things that live in there. And so maintaining a level high enough to create a diatom bloom causes a lot of times you have to dose daily to keep it there at a consistent level to be able to do it. So it just takes time and patience, which if you've been reefing for a long time, you know that's the key to all of it, is being patient. So let's look over to the easier ones. Australopsis and Coolio. UV sterilization typically works with these. So there is still a degree to the pods and phyto and all that. I still recommend all that because that'll also long-term help keep dinos from even showing up. And then these guys move over the water column at night. So the UV sterilizer typically takes care of it. But this is one that these are the most toxic type of dinoflagellates. So you definitely need to run your carbon because they can cause all sorts of domino effects down the road. So next, we're going to get into the pictures, I believe. So this is Australopsis. I pulled these directly off the paper. And so on the bottom, you've got some comments on which each one is. Australopsis is a very small one. It's one of the more common ones that we see. So this is the one that swims at night, goes up into the water column, so it's easily removed by a sterilizer. I've even had some luck with heavy mechanical filtration, but lights out is another thing that we do a lot. Periods of lights out where you do it, say I used to do 3 days on, 3 days off. Not quite as effective as we thought it was. It just puts them into a dormant state and they pop right back up and the lights on anyway. So it doesn't change much. I will say that I forgot to put it in there, but the hydrogen peroxide dosing does help tremendously with this, especially if you've got a very small patch of it. You can turn the flow off, get a little syringe and go in there and put it directly on the dinos, and you'll literally see them sizzle and pop and disappear. So it's a very small infection of it, no big deal, relatively easy to handle. If it's tank wide, then just dose the whole tank. The dosing is 1 ml per 10 gallons. So this is Australopsis. Like I said, it's hard to diagnose exactly which dino. You can do 3, 6, or 12, but you need to adjust your dosage. My dosage is based off 3%. So if you go 6, you're going to have that, and you go 12, you're going to have it again. So, but yeah, so unfortunately, a microscope is the only way to truly determine which ones you have, or if it's even dinos at all. It could be the other stuff. So I've got some pictures of the other stuff coming up too. So let's skip to the next one. This will be the Kulia, a little bit bigger. And then there's a picture, obviously, of it on some sand bed. To me, in that picture, it looks like diatoms. So it's one of those, like I said, that like they're very different until you put them under a microscope. They look the same until you put them under a microscope, and then they are vastly different from each other. You can notice all these dinos relatively round, oval shape. When I get to the diatoms, they're long and they're stick shaped. And so very easy to tell under, they recommended a 400x magnification to be able to see well and tell exactly what it is. So we can go ahead and skip on to the next one. This is one of the ones I can't pronounce. This is also one of the rarer ones that you'll see. So I've never seen this one in under a slide yet. We've only had the microscope for a little while, but I've not seen this one under a slide yet. This is it over here at the bottom on the bottom left. They're on a mat of cyano. So they're competing with cyano and feeding with cyano so they can live, intermingle. Let's go to the next one. And this is the small cell. So there's a large and small cell of this type. They said the small cell is like almost never seen. So super duper duper rare for it to show up. So chances are most of us won't ever come across that one. And you can skip ahead to the next one. This is the last one. And they don't have as much info on this one as they do the rest. So I'm also assuming very rare, not as easy to come across because they only had 2 photos of this one completely. And the next one should be, so this is the Chlysophytes, the little stringy things in the 2 top left, top left and top center. Those are often associated with these Sympodinium with a nematode. So yes, planktonic dinoflagellates, and it's a lot different one, but it's also luckily one that goes up in the water column that is easily dealable. And then the next slide should be our diatoms, which you can see very, very, very much different from. And if you happen to look at under a microscope and you see like red slime looks like hairs, it's like long strands versus these little blocky ovals. So that basically concludes it. That is the basic differences, the basic idea of it. Like I said, I'm going to provide her with the paper that I got a lot of this information from that we've been using here in the store. All of our service guys are using it now. And that way you guys can be able to look into it a little bit more closely and see what you could potentially do, what the dosages are, because they recommend, like if you're cleaning your tank too hard, you got 0 nitrates, 0 phosphates. And obviously you can either feed more, because dinos usually come on when you hit 0 and 0. Like when you get it too clean, it's when dinos show up. And so you can either start overfeeding, add more fish to your system to try and raise those levels, or you can dose nitrates and phosphates in a liquid form. Like Brightwell has a product that they recommended, and they have all the dosing information. It requires a little math. How much you want to increase it, times your tank volume, times this random number, and then that's the volume that you'll dose to your system to get it up to that point that you want it to be at. So, so yeah, that's what I have right now. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
You talked about dosing Phyto.
Yes.
How much Phyto would you dose in the tank?
So every tank is a little different. Most manufacturers have a recommendation, and I always recommend to my customers to start with half the volume of the manufacturer's recommended dose, and then they'll say to do it 3 or 4 times a week. I start off at once a week, and then that once a week I'll do it say for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll go to the full volume they recommended dose. And where I know to stop is typically you'll start getting a lot more green film algae on your glass. So if you've gone and you've increased it too much, you'll start seeing green film more on your glass. You got to be careful with dosing phytoplankton as well, because it does lower your nitrates and phosphates. And so if you're fighting low nitrates and low phosphates already, you need to be very minimal with that dose. And so you're trying to find that balance where, yeah, it's that typical balance we're all fighting to find with nitrates, phosphates, and now calcium and mag and all the things. So, and there is something in that paper about heavy metals as well. They don't go super into depth with it, but you pretty much would have to have an ICP analysis to see if that's what could potentially be causing it. But this is, so far, all the information I've shared today has worked in every case we've come across. So it's been very, very effective. It took the guesswork out of it. So yeah, absolutely.
So outside of the one picture that actually just showed here's a a brown spot in the sand.
Yeah.
How do you even know?
So
Outside of so I just go home, look at my tank, and
right.
Do I got all these bugs or don't I?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Right. And
if
that
I sample the water, I could just be getting anything at random.
Yeah, exactly. They're all there all the time, and they're all there checking each other. And so usually when everything's right, you don't see anything on your sand bed, you don't see anything on your rocks. All of it is keeping each other in check, and there's that nice little balance that's going on. If one of those animals that is important, say your diatoms, don't have enough silicate to stay alive and they start dying off, then you have the issues with the imbalance and one thing taking over, whether that be red slime, whether that be dinos, whether it be whatever. And so hair algae, all the things. Visually, the most simple way to describe it, red slime just looks like a slimy mat. Like you typically will see that on, lake beds and wherever all the time. But the dinoflagellates typically looks more like, lack of a better word, snot. It typically comes up off the rock. It's stringy. If you touch it, it's super slimy. It's got bubbles in it, and it typically is very long and stringy and a little bit taller. Whereas red slime tends to kind of hug the rocks more. But there have been cases where I've had both at the same time, and it's like the red slime looks all tall and stringy, and it changes colors, and it doesn't look quite right. But it turned out it was dinos mixed in with the cyano, and they were just wreaking havoc together. And so I had to treat each one of them differently, go after the cyano with a bunch of water changes and just try to manual removal it, and then eventually just hit it with ChemiClean. Then I was just left with the dinos, and then had to fight them off separately. And so, whole thing. But it is the visually looking at it, a lot of times you can tell if it's dino or cyano, but then which dino is the hard part. And then that the other one that we were talking about, the one that I said comes from high silicates, that's not diatoms, that other one that was in there, that one looks almost exactly like dinos. And so the only way to tell is to put it on a slide and take a look at it. And typically that one is longer, more hair-like strands as well. So peroxide works for darn near everything. Peroxide's a hell of a thing. It's like the cheapest, easiest thing that I've ever used. And it's just oxidizing them. It's just H2O2. And so you're just throwing that oxidation level.
Dosing hydrogen versus, target.
Yeah, you can dose it like I said, the 3%, I do 1 mil per 10 gallons,
right.
And a tank volume. And
how is that on the rest of your tank?
Surprisingly fine. Surprisingly fine. I have never had an issue, even with well overdosing it. Like I had a bad dino issue in the store I used to run over in Fort Worth, and we've been fighting it for months and doing the whole lights on, lights off thing. The hydrogen peroxide thing had just been suggested at the time, so we started trying it. And after a couple months, it worked. And then we kept dosing it. It's like, well, if it gets rid of it, it'll keep it going. And then we started noticing that there's a lot less hair algae in the tank, there's a lot less algae on the glass and stuff like that. So I know a lot of people who just dose it daily. That's just part of their regime. That's part of the regimen. And so,
thing for like an power outage.
Yep. Because you're putting an extra oxygen molecule in the system. So
Can you say that into Zoom so the Zoom people can hear it?
if you have a power outage, you can dose hydrogen peroxide at lower levels. Keep it, if it's 3%, do about 1 mil per 10 gallons of water, and it will help increase oxygen levels in your aquarium if you don't have like an air stone or battery backup or something like that. So it will help. Good call.
You get tired of blowing through the straw.
Yeah. Or holding a drill with a paint mixer on the end of it. Or I remember one year I just had a 1 gallon pitcher, and every 20 minutes or so, just take the pitcher out, pour it into the air, make it as violent as possible to try and get as much water stirred up as I could. And it worked. I mean,
How is that on crustaceans and your microalgae?
I had no effect at all. It had larger celled algae, like, plants and larger celled algae, even the zooxanthellae and corals seem to be unaffected by it. And yeah, it'll dent hair algae. It won't take care of it. Now, if you go in there and you do what I was talking about and like take your whole tank's dosage and turn the water flow off and hit that on the spot, or dip your frags in hydrogen peroxide, you can do like a 50-50 mix, and that works fine. So yeah, hydrogen peroxide is a great one to use, and it works great against dinos. Not as much against cyano. It helps, but it doesn't kill it off. Just right into it.
Even if you're spot treating, you want to combine tank dosage.
Yeah.
So like I got a 120 gallon tank.
Yeah.
So I measure out
It's 12 mil.
milliliters. Then
Yeah,
I
you don't want to go over the go over the tank dosage.
That way you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff off the rock,
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't affect SPS, LPS.
We used it. The tank I was talking about, the tank that we were talking.
Wanted to try it.
When you're dipping, there are some corals that are sensitive.
Yeah.
Corals are a little sensitive.
They can be. You don't want to dip them too long. You want to do a short dip.
You could dip an acro in the 25%.
Yeah.
3% diluted down
By
3 to
half
1.
at least. Yeah. 3 to 1 is better.
for
But
2 minutes.
Yeah.
And they come out of the other side. It's fine.
and the tank I was talking about that we were having the long-term issues in was an acro, like a frag tank for SPS. And so it was probably 500 SPS frags in there that I was having to constantly go blow dinos off of them to try and keep them from, that stuff is toxic, rubbing up against them, it's hurting them. We lost a lot of them. And the hydrogen peroxide is what turns around. So it does work. But all the other things I talked about today are a little bit more scientific about making it work. But that one's a good route to go. It's like on that early slide. If you're not sure, do this checklist of things, and hydrogen peroxide's in that checklist of things. So yeah.
I mean,
I've triple dosed and it didn't do anything, even to SPS.
gone pretty high.
Yeah, I've triple dosed and it didn't hurt anything.
Dump 3 or 4 bottles in there.
Yeah, we actually, so we've got some
Might kill off all the bacteria.
Yeah, you'll kill your bacteria is what'll happen. Yeah, you'll oxidize everything, and that's not a good idea. So yeah.
It was 2 weeks.
You want to ask the Zoom people if they have questions?
Yeah. Anybody on Zoom have any questions? Or if
Don't
you're
have to
on
come
mute, you'll have to unmute yourself. I'm ready for the loudness out of the speakers.
I know.
No,
We did
Turn
the
it down.
sound check, we got it back down. Does anybody here have any questions?
Go ahead, Sonia.
Oh, hi, Sonny. We hear you.
Jump in there.
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, because again, I'm learning all of this, but I've been dosing Phyto with when I feed my fish, my system.
Yeah, perfectly fine.
I've had a big problem with phosphates, and they're zeroing out all the time.
Mhm.
So I'm always constantly putting in neophos and nitrate.
Yep.
And I'm like, I can't keep them up. Should I just throw them to? Yeah, frozen food.
You could,
Switch to blank.
Well, I also
Yeah,
have
you could go-
pellets. I mean,
well, PE pellets are also one of the cleanest ones out there. I worked for them when I was a traveling salesman, and like they are literally like the cleanest pellet out there, like by far.
Go buy some Tetramin.
Yeah, go get some that and just start overfeeding. Like start feeding more than you think you need to, and that is what's going to bring those levels up. Like in these frag tanks back here in the back room,
Phyto into my frozen cube when I melt it.
right? But you're not getting all the phosphate out of that. That phyto's not eating all that phosphate. Like it's
That's
in that
everything else.
tissue of the animal. Like that's a byproduct of everything that's alive and is organic is loaded with phosphate. Everything that's alive is loaded with phosphate. All your tissue, all your internals, everything.
Well, I think I have an oversized skimmer. I have a 90-gallon tank and I've got a Nios 160.
Yeah, you're a bit oversized. Yeah.
More food, more fish.
Yeah. Seriously, more food, more fish.
I'm just constantly.
These frag tanks in the back room, I feed them 3 to 4 times a day. I'll do pellets in the morning, frozen in the early afternoon, coral food at night. When I do coral food, I make those, it looks like a storm just came through. It's just
You guys
Oh
will be
milky.
If you
It
came in
looks,
here on a slow day, because we'll probably feed it 6.
yeah, like yesterday we fed probably 5, 6 times.
Out of order.
Yeah, we were just bored. We were like over there target feeding everything, and like phosphate or nitrates back there are 5, and phosphates are like 0.25. Like it's nothing. And like we're overfeeding just to keep up. If I don't feed like that for 2 or 3 days, the corals absorb all of it out of the water and take all of it out, and I've got nothing left. And so it's a constant effort. Yeah. But like more fish, more food, less skimmer maybe. Like I know people who turn their skimmer off for 3 days, 4 days a week and only run it 3 or 4 days.
It's all.
Sorry. I have to go plug my bottle of Nopo.
All right. Well, I guess that's.
Well, before you go anywhere, Brant, oh,
Okay.
sorry, got a
Gizmo,
puppy dog
what's
on the
up, buddy?
floor.
Gizmo.
Behind this, oh, move.
Oh, I moved them. Yeah. I didn't want them to fall.
Do you see in front of the camera? I'll bring them.
Try jokes.
Yeah.
You try
This joke.
I'm not good at jokes.
So I'm gonna hold this up to the camera so they can see. We've got a little gift here. This is to say thank you
Awesome.
very much. And
Everybody
and
loves
come over
Swedish
here.
fish.
I'll come over here.
No, we're gonna put you in front of the camera. Is he on the
Yeah,
camera?
Corey, you gotta do it for the camera.
Hey,
buddy.
Corey. And then these are extras for everyone. who's
Yeah,
not
that's
here.
awesome. Yeah, they'll love it.
So-
We've got an awesome crew here. So they'll appreciate that for sure. Thank you guys so much for coming by too. Yeah. I'm glad we
Awesome.
could help
Well,
out.
thank
doing
you.
here.
So
Yeah.
we're here at AquaStudios. We don't normally date the recording, but Brandon said about having materials. So for those of you who are only watching on YouTube and you're like, this is awesome information. How do I get those metrics? So go out to the Hobby Club website, www.DFWMAS. I'll just read Hans's t-shirt. Thank you. DFWMAS.org. Go to the forum. This is the April. What is today's date? Oh, it's April of 2022. So April 21st. Thank you, everybody, of 2022, and we will have that up. Do you think you'll email them to me
I'll
this
email
week?
to you right now.
Oh, so we'll have them up by tomorrow, weekend at the absolute latest, but likely even tonight. So thank you everyone so very much. Is it okay if I do, your store is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Can I walk
You're
it
welcome to
around
walk
and
around,
film?
yeah.
A couple of lights have turned off, but I can fire everything back up.
Okay. Zoom people, do you have anything you want to share? Because the Zoom is actually attached to this phone, and I'm going to unplug the speaker so I can go mobile.
I just have a comment.
Oh,
Can I just share one
Absolutely.
comment?
what's your
So
comment?
I shop at the store. They hands down have really healthy fish.
Here, do you
I
want to
have
talk and share?
Oh, yeah. All right, so I just want to say I'm a local here. I live close by to this fish store.
See
and-
you in there.
Oh, I'm so short. Oh my gosh.
There
I
you
live close to this fish store and, I shop around for a lot of fish. I've got, 5 tanks. And I just want to say that they have really healthy specimens. And I'm like, come in here, they answer all my questions, what's compatible. I don't think I've ever been steered wrong, and I've been here for a long time. So I highly recommend it. Just make a trip down here. It's so worth it. Maybe call ahead and see when the shipments are coming in and letting the fish acclimate. But I highly recommend the store. So true vouching for them. So thank you.
Anyone have anything else before I disconnect the speakers for Zoom? Okay. Zoom people, you're welcome to stay on. We won't be able to hear you, but we're going to just do a walkthrough of the store. I guess we'll start in the front over there, and then we'll just go through, and even in the back room and the tanks and everything. So thank you, everybody. And they left the registers open if you haven't already been shopping. So help yourself. I'm plugging from here, and we're going mobile. I don't.
Battery
power.
out on PC.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, that is, I'll just go quickly. So these are the different tanks here, and lots of fish. other side. We had technical problems behind me. That's why I paused. Lots of food. Some of the best selection of Rod's food I've seen in a little while. Some great pumps, food, lots of rock. Here we have plants. There's betas here. We have a freestanding here. I'm going to come back over this way. So I don't think I showed you guys all of the shapes of rocks. I know that's oftentimes something we're all looking for, right? We want a different shape or a different something. They have them all sorted and priced out here. Really nice for everybody. Oh, and I never knew there were tanks on this side too. Oh my gosh, I've never been on this side.
They added, and you can see their sun system, really good bacteria loads and algae growth.
Nice. Awesome. I'm actually using this projector screen all the way over there so I can tell what this is picking up. And our DFWMAS Hobby Club setup is, we're actually blocking part of the store, but there's refrigerators over there. That's somebody's tank setup that goes out tomorrow. Here's additional tanks here. It's busy here in the coral room. We're going bluer. Some of the lights are off because it's after hours. They were very generous to stay open for us tonight. But lots of selection. Lots of beautiful, beautiful stuff. Oh, thank you. Oh, nice. Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much. You're a fantastic speaker. This was awesome tonight. Thank you. So everyone, I'm going to close here this evening. Have a great time. You'll see this come up on YouTube. Hopefully tomorrow, could even be as soon as tonight. Thanks everyone and bye. Hi Cynthia, I see you. Bye. Oh, this isn't where I have